Good afternoon and welcome to the Will Cain Show. I'm your host today, Joey Jones, filling in for Will. I just hope he's having a great time because I sure am. I enjoyed yesterday. The training wheels are off. I better figure this out and get it right today. We had a good time though. Listen, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, tuned in last night to watch the president give this major address, prime time. I'm told it was live. I don't know if I believe that. He seemed a little tired, but maybe that's just who he is. And most of us watched really looking for an answer to a question, really just one question. Why are you quitting, Joe? Is it because you're old and mentally incapable? Is it because, you're pushed out by the party leaders like Nancy Pelosi? And I don't think any of us really expected the truth. Ironically, he talked a lot about telling the truth. But I think we did expect like some detailed and at least well-crafted gaslighting. Telling us something like the decision to drop out is to spend more time with my family. Or maybe something so far as to say, man, I've done such a good job, it's time to retire and enjoy what's left of my life. We didn't expect him to tell the truth necessarily, but we expected him to address this issue as head-on as a politician will. And the funny thing is, he had one line. I've got it written down here. One line only about quitting the race. He says, the best way forward is to pass the torch. Okay, but why, Joe? Why do you need to pass the torch? So from there he went on and he drifted further away from our expectations, less and less about why he's quitting. And really he started to talk about why he should be reelected. He told us all of his major accomplishments like securing the border. Yeah, he said that. And maybe he talked about 16 million jobs, not noticing those are rebound jobs from before COVID. And then he said this.
I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world. We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage.
Yeah. The first president to say that we're not at war anywhere in the world. If my legs weren't screwed on so well, they'd probably had fallen off. I mean, my jaw absolutely hit the floor. I couldn't believe he said that. President Trump famously went an entire year without one death in Afghanistan. And that was a big deal. And he campaigns today saying he didn't start a new war. But for President Biden to go so far as to try and claim we're not at war anywhere in the world, man, that goes a bridge too far. I don't want to have to remind him that Americans died on October 7th and that Americans are held hostage in Gaza today, that a U.S. carrier fleet was in the Mediterranean, a Marine Corps Navy MAGTF had to sail through the Red Sea, shooting down missiles shot by the Houthis in Yemen along the way. And then we had 2 Navy SEALs die, intercepting munitions from Iran down to Yemen to be used in this conflict, potentially against United States troops. So he may say we're not at war, technically, with anyone. We haven't been at war, technically, in several decades, since World War II. But we are getting killed. 13 Americans were killed in Afghanistan when he botched the withdrawal. But maybe there is a universe created by Marvel or DC where this world and picture he paints exists. Maybe there's a universe where the Afghan withdrawal was absolutely flawless, as they like to say, notwithstanding the 13 Americans we lost. Maybe there's a universe where we're not enthralled in a war in Ukraine. We're not enthralled in a war in Israel. We don't have things going on in Africa that we're concerned about. A war ready to pop off in this powder keg that we live in on 3 different continents. Maybe there's a universe where Beau Biden died in Iraq, like he likes to say. But in the universe we're forced to live in the reality that we call life, our country is anything but not at war around the world. I guess the semantics of war are exactly what he wants to play, and I get that. I mean, politicians use semantics, they use stats to create lies, but at the end of the day, we're in a bad place. Our country's defense, our defense force is in a bad spot. We've got wars about to pop off all over, and China is attacking us everywhere from the internet to the South China Sea. Here to react to all of this is a good buddy of mine, a fellow North Georgian, although he's on the wrong side of the state. He's on the east side over there. My buddy Doug Collins, former congressman. Congressman, thanks for joining us. What's your top-of-the-line reaction to Biden's address last night?
Hey, Joe, it's always good to be with you, especially from the good side of the state. You know, we have to look at that, you know, on the mountainside. But no, it's shock a little bit. And I say that not as a shock that I didn't hear anything I didn't expect. It was really what, again, like you said earlier, what we didn't hear. And it's what I said earlier today on an interview that it reminded me of when your mom used to get you dressed for pictures and family picture day was going to happen and nobody wanted to be there. And they showed these spots of Hunter and Ashley and Jill and they all sitting there like hostage kind of this photo, like we really don't want to be here, but mom made us come. And it just leads to the fact even more so that I believe, first and foremost, he can't function at the level he wants to, and he can't bring himself to admit that. But number two, the big one is he was pushed out. And right now you're seeing a war develop. It appears, if you read reports, and I know you're hearing some of these as well, that it seems to be a pretty good divide opening up even more between Biden and Obama. And there's never been a hugely close relationship there. But I don't think this is what Obama thought was actually going to happen. And Kamala Harris is now sort of swimming upstream. So it's going to be interesting to see how this actually works. But last night was just, it was beneath Joe Biden. I mean, and it was beneath the presidency to quit and not give a reason. Go back to Lyndon Johnson, go back to others. You know, there was a reason. Here's what I think. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to, but it was nothing last night except a quasi State of the Union.
Yeah, well, first of all, in that picture taking thing, I remember in the third grade, I was getting picked on for being chunky. So I took my picture like this. I was trying to make my face skinnier, and now all the celebrities do it. They get all that fat taken out. So I started a trend back in Donville.
There you go.
But to be serious here, you talked about Obama, and I think that's interesting. So this is my perspective. I want you to react to it. Tell me what you think. Tell me why I'm wrong. You've been there. I haven't. I'm on the outside looking in. I think that it was so obvious that Obama was a part of this coup to get rid of Biden that he's probably trying to take a step back right now and not put himself in the conversation. Now, I'm not saying it's working, but I think the lack of endorsement, maybe it's because he's like, oh, it's pretty obvious I was a part of this. I need to take a step back till maybe the convention.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe he's wanting to play the superhero, come in at the last minute. I'm endorsing me, and here comes me and Oprah and George Clooney to ride in to save the day kind of scenario. But look, he can't hide the fact of his involvement. I mean, it's been well documented, well reported that he was behind the George Clooney issue, the New York Times George Clooney report, the whole deal there. I thought it was very interesting, though. And if you like, I mean, Joy, I like this. If you love the world of intrigue, notice that the Clintons came out very quickly for Harris. Obama has stayed back. It just shows that there is still a lot of difficulty in the quote elite Democrat world, and that they're struggling against this Harris in particular, who is very liberal. I mean, it makes Joe Biden and Obama look conservative in many ways. And I think this is a play that's playing out right now for them, that they're going to have to get together. And now they're sort of stuck with Harris. And I don't think they ever thought they were going to get stuck with Harris. But the Clinton play sort of gives me indication that there is a friction in this family, so to speak, because you've heard Carville and Begala, who are all more Clinton folks. Then you got the Obama folks who are just sort of out here now playing, ooh, we know nothing, although you got ice cream all over your face. No, I had no ice cream, and then trying to play it. So I think maybe it's the play it later. I'm going to come in with a smooth, I'll save the day kind of protein.
I want to move forward a little bit here. I know that in your role in Congress, I believe you were on, it was the Judiciary Committee. Am I right about that? We're on internet, so I can be a little bit less polished.
Ranking member,
and so as a ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, I believe Kamala Harris was on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. And I think like what she did best probably was how much she went after those nominees and all the confirmation hearings. And she was, I don't mean this in any kind of condescending way, she was a bulldog. She went after it. And they liked that. I'm going to have somebody on after you, Gotham Chopra. That was one of the first things that he told me years ago before she was in this national vice president presidential thing. It seems like in her time as Biden's VP, you've not seen that from her. I think some of the awkward laugh is because that's just not really her personality. And so as she becomes a presidential nominee, which should happen in the next couple of weeks, do you think she brings that back? Do you think you see some of that Senator Kamala Harris? I mean, I guess on the other side of it, Senator Kamala Harris only got 1% of the primary vote. What is the strategy for her to be likable and malleable?
Well, if that is what the plan is, she did really a bad job the last 3.5 years, because she has become a meme on many accounts for what, how she's went at issues, how she's gaslighted, as you called it earlier, never claiming the border. The only thing that she's really stood out for is the ability for people to, for abortion rights to kill the unborn. I mean, that's something she's really, made a stand on. It's the only time you see sort of that fierceness that people talk about in the Senate. Look, it's easy in the Senate and the House to do a 5-minute question answer, a 10-minute question answer. You sort of prepare. You're in complete control. And I think it comes back from her prosecutor days. The problem she's got is her campaigning that we have seen is not good. And the story and the narrative on her has been set. All you got to go back to is 2020 in the debates. Tulsi Gabbard just basically gutted the Harris campaign. She stopped the campaign cold. You saw the appeal there, and then the pick of Harris, I think, was a pick to not have to be where we're at right now. So I think we'll see a moderation. What got me, though, is if you saw the press report today, she put out a statement condemning the protest of Palestinians, pro-Hamas folks in D.C. yesterday. And I put out a social media post that basically said, you're protesting a little too much and a little too late here to try and come back to the middle in these things.
You're not in Congress anymore. With a month like this, are you kind of happy? Are you happy that you're not having to deal with all this?
There are times I'm really frustrated with Congress, in the sense I got a lot of good friends still up there and I get talked about a lot of times. My concern is, and nobody's talking about this because of everything else going on, it's rightfully so. You realize, Joey, that the Republicans are shutting the House down for the next month, which is a normal August recess where they come home to the district and do other things. But they're shutting it down this week, not because they finished anything, it's because they couldn't get appropriations done. And I've said this before, you and I have talked about this before. If you're the majority, you cannot blame the minority on not passing bills. You've got 218, you've got the number, and we can't even pass our own appropriations bills. That's something that we've got to get better at. I call it divorcing reality in politics, and we've got to get back to being a governing body. Don't get everything we want. Nobody does. But right now, it's almost like we've just thrown our hands up and we're headed headlong into a CR. It's going to happen. Mark it down. CR in September. It'll go through December. Depending on how the election runs, it may run into February. Congratulations. We're back again because we as majority can't get together.
So are you telling me that we're going to end up with the same policy and legislation that we would have gotten under Kevin McCarthy, just probably a worse version of it and a weaker majority? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you that we're going to have something similar because McCarthy couldn't get the votes. Speaker Johnson, who I consider a dear friend. I mean, it's beyond leadership now. It's beyond the fact that they can't get the votes because you have certain individuals who just won't find a way forward. And I think that's the struggle. Yeah. Look, remember, the House bill will go to the Senate. It's not going to be the final bill. But this is a problem. And look, I get moral convictions. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if there's just something moral that you can't bring, I get you. But is every bill something like that? And I just don't think there is.
Let's talk about this part. I think this is a part that doesn't get to be fleshed out on TV very often or even on radio. And I know this because of people like you that I've been friends with and staffers I'm friends with. It's an election year. It's a presidential election year. And right now today, it would be hard for me to believe, Republican or Democrat, the goal in legislation is more about getting someone to vote for something you can use against them in their campaign than to get legislation passed that's going to help the American people. I mean, isn't that a part of the problem here?
It is. I mean, look at the legislation. Just go back through June and July. I've been a part of this. So look, I'm not saying I'm sitting here with clean hands, 8 years. I didn't look. It all happened, both Democrats and Republicans. But there was a time in a majority before 18 when Pelosi took over and really, I think, set the pall of the legislative agenda that we have now. She got through the main things she wanted to get through because she was willing to give up position and power for policy. We haven't got there yet. And I think we've got to understand it. So we did pass big stuff, the tax cuts, we did criminal justice reform, we did a lot of things, but now they're not even getting that done. And I think that is a lot because, when we have bills like Save Our, gas stoves and do things like that. Yeah, they appear, they play, they're going at something. But at the end of the day, we're not making a move in areas where people are hurting right now with inflation. They're hurting with job independence. They're hurting with energy. They're hurting with these, and they're scared about the future in many ways. And you're seeing that in the polls.
I want to move over. This is something I kind of alluded to this in the intro. I know a lot about you. I don't know where you were born and where you went to high school, but I know you've been in Northeast Georgia for a long time. I don't know if you're born and raised up there or. So I was born and raised in Dalton, Georgia, Northwest Georgia. When people ask me where I'm from, I tell them North Georgia, the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And I think you know as well as I do. I was talking to the producers of this show before we got started. My grandfather was a moonshiner. Like I'm the first person in my family to graduate high school, enlist in the military rather than be drafted, and to go to college. And it's not to be disparaging about my family. It's just to talk about what the culture is in Appalachia. And I'd say until 9/11, patriotism was more about where you live in your community than your country. And I saw that change. So we have this vice presidential nominee with President Trump named J.D. Vance. And I remember the year his book came out, I was on a flight and this guy from California just talked to me for an hour. And he sent me that book afterwards because he's like, man, you know, this is a book that's going to resonate with you. And it did. I mean, the movie brought me to tears. But here's my question, and it's a little bit of a curveball, but I think you'll understand it. J.D. Vance is parked in apparently Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. I don't mean to get in a fight over grits versus cream of wheat, but are they using that Appalachian tie, because I don't necessarily consider Kentucky the South, are they using that Appalachian tie to win Georgia and North Carolina? Like, could they do more? Does he resonate with you as somebody from this area of the country? Do you think his story resonates with maybe southern swing states?
It could, Joey. Look, I'm born and raised in Gainesville, Georgia. I mean, almost 58. Yeah. About 2 weeks, I'll be 58 years. In fact, I've lived and worked across the world. I've always been in Gainesville, but I'm really close to where I grew up on Lake Lanier. And yes, it resonates, I think, in the part. I watched the movie as well. I have to be honest. It was a movie that for other reasons was very hard to watch. And also just because you and I both have at least looked or lived that story. We have friends or family who've lived that especially the first hour and a half of that story. I mean, it's just there, and it's very difficult. Could it play? Yes. Now, look, they're playing on Appalachia that you and I don't know, and that is Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, Northern Tennessee, Western Virginia, that kind of thing, West Virginia area, which I think plays very similarly to here. Because look, you come over from Dalton. If you wanted good moonshine, you came to Dawson County and Lumpkin County over where I was at. And that's what they made over in my part of the world. NASCAR came from there. Bill Elliott, that's where it all does. It doesn't mean that we're less educated. And, I always love that line. Just because I speak funny doesn't mean I'm stupid. I may be a little slow, but I'm not, I do get it. They can use him other places, but I think the part is Trump is doing well in Georgia. I think he'll continue to do well in Georgia. North Carolina, I think the Harris ticket actually takes, in many ways, Georgia and possibly North Carolina off the map. And I said this a few weeks ago, that the maps are completely different right now. They have to go back and reassess where we are. And so September will be interesting to see after the Democrats get their chance to do their 4-day ad presentation. We'll see where the maps are. But I think she's in trouble in Georgia. I don't think she was the best pick for Georgia, which is not unknown to the Democrats, but North Carolina as well. So I think they're having to. J.D. Vance will play wherever he goes, especially in the South. I think they're just focused on trying to hit Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, up in that area as much as they can, and then play to that rural working class vote.
Well, I got one more question for you before I let you go. By the way, I agree with pretty much all of that. I think if you're a Democrat, you're sitting there going, do we need Georgia or North Carolina to win? And if you're a Republican, you're sitting there going, do we need Pennsylvania or maybe Wisconsin to win? I think Republicans have to have Ohio. And then from there, the map really goes west. And that's where we hear about Mark Kelly and what's going to happen with Arizona. I think Nevada is probably going to be tough. I don't know for Trump. But it's going to come down like it always does to a couple of states. But like you said, maybe it's different states this time. Maybe and that's interesting because she still has to pick a VP. And J.D. Vance, they tell us, is going to be in the Midwest, and that's where he's going to stay. And I find it interesting from a nerd perspective, from a personal perspective. I want to ask him, do you eat grits or cream of wheat? Because, you could say you're from Appalachia. I know a lot about that. We eat grits around here.
What's
last
cream
question.
Of wheat? What's cream of wheat?
Exactly. I don't know. It's like what stuffing. That's right. It's grits without flavor, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly.
It's like, if you're eating stuffing instead of dressing, you just didn't have a nanny that knew how to cook like mine. And down here, nanny means grandmother, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got 2 Democrat senators in the state of Georgia. I'd say that our last 2 attempts to challenge them have been pretty weak. I think that some of it was the way the governor handled it. I think some of it was resting on our laurels, not doing the things we need to. I know that you were a Senate primary candidate. When the seats come up, is that something you're interested in looking at again?
We'll always say this year, my focus right now, though, Joey, is November. If we're having this conversation in 2025, we'll talk about different things. My focus, though, is getting the conservative message. I feel like what you just said, we've lost the message because our messengers are becoming too dependent. Remember this scene from Top Gun when they said that our dogfighting skills dropped because we became too dependent on missiles and not guns?
Yeah.
I think in many ways, conservatives, we've lost that. We enjoy the 40-line tweet or 40-word tweet more than we do the 3-sentence, here's what we believe. And I think that's what my focus is, getting Trump elected in November, and then continuing what I've been doing, going around the state, going around the country and saying, conservatives, you got the best policies, but you're terrible at messaging. We got to get passionate about who we are, Joey. So we'll see about that later as we come.
Doug Collins, a proud Georgian. Can I get a go Dogs out of you? It's about time for that.
And go Dogs, baby.
Thanks for joining me, brother. I appreciate all the insight.
Take care, Joyce.
Take care. All right, this is the Will Cain Show. We've got a really exciting guest, Gotham Chopra, coming up. But first, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.
Network.
Hey there, it's me, Kennedy. Make sure to check out my podcast, Kennedy Saves the World. It is 5 days a week. Every week, we check in with Jimmy Fallon, bring in authors for the book club, and even treat some of your favorite Fox personalities to a very special happy hour. Download and listen at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Kennedy Saves the World. America's listening to Fox News.
Friday on Fox Nation.
What you're about to see is incredible.
The sensational hit show bursts back into action.
Drop the gun!
Don't miss all new episodes of Crime Cam 24/7. New cameras.
You have eyes on him with the drone.
Exposing new crimes. And delivering swift justice. Crime Cam 24/7. New episode Friday on Fox Nation. Sign up now at foxnation.com.
America is streaming.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
All right, welcome back to the Will Cain Show. Hopefully you've been listening already. We had a great interview just now with my buddy Doug Collins, and I think we decided that grits are the way to go, not cream of wheat. So if you're listening and you're on the chat, let us know what you think about that. There's dressing, stuffing. There's a lot of reasons that the South has a better cuisine than the Midwest, but we'll leave it at that. I'm really excited. I'm going to bring somebody in that probably doesn't watch the Will Cain Show or even Fox News Channel very often. But I'll tell you what, I've spent a lot of time with him, and I consider him a friend and even someone that I bounce ideas from politics to sports off of. This is filmmaker and co-founder of an amazing series, if I do say so myself, called Religion of Sports, Gotham Chopra. Gotham, thanks for joining me, brother.
Thanks for having me. You are correct. I'm only here because of you, figuratively and literally. But I'd say your ratings are going up too, because my whole family is watching right now, and they rarely watch Fox News. But but I think they're going to hopefully enjoy this one.
No, this is if we have any hope left in this world for this country to be what it's ever been or could be, it's to have conversations between people like you and I. And I want to preface this a little bit because I want our viewers and listeners right now to understand why this is important to me. If I only exist in a world where the people around me either agree with me or have my shared experience, and that's a term probably from the left a little bit, then I don't learn anything. And I don't learn anything about people that I might argue with. And then those arguments become about insults and hate because there's nothing about them that makes me like them otherwise. And that's a part of this conversation I want to have. And so, I guess I'd like to start, maybe do this in reverse from the way I thought about it. You and I met because you're doing a show called Religion of Sports, and I've got the background of being in a family that moonshined and souped up cars and raced them, and I was involved in that episode a little bit. But you came down here to Georgia, you saw me shoot guns and eat at a pool hall in the mountains of Georgia, and I guess what I want to talk about is what I learned about you is that was very different than where you're from and what you grew up doing, but your perspective was pretty positive. I'd love to give you a chance to just tell me about it yourself.
No, I mean, look, I've been in this business for a long time, making sports documentaries and working with athletes and stuff like that. I look back at our experience, working with you on that as the thing I'm probably most fond of and that impacted me the most. I grew up, as you said, Northeast. I'm a liberal from New England. Grew up in Boston, very proud, happy Celtics fan these days. But I'm the child of immigrants. I'm first generation American. I now am one of those people who lives in crazy California, on the progressive left, and love it. But my experience with you, and by the way, I've been to Georgia. My wife is from Atlanta, Georgia. But my experience, I had very little exposure to NASCAR. I had very little exposure to, where you've grown up and your lifestyle, the military. I learned so much, and I think probably just the week that I spent down there with you, and just really, I think, bonded, and we've been close ever since, and except for our occasional Twitter wars. I think we've really built a strong relationship. And like you, I value very much what, especially in this time, over the last, I guess, almost ever since we met, this polarizing climate we live in. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, hearing your perspective, and just, it's helped me, I think, form a bigger perspective of what's going on in this country and empathizing more with, what other people, not in New England, not in California are going through.
No, I have to agree completely. I mean, I don't know all your politics because you're not as actively in this as I am. I mean, it's what I do for a living. So I put my opinions out there all the time. And when I get your opinion, usually is when you're pointing out to me that I've got a fact wrong or I'm obviously partaking in spin and don't even mean to, because we do live in a bubble no matter who we are. But what I have learned from you is that a lot of times things I disagree with aren't because I disagree with the intent, it's I disagree with the method or maybe the outcome that I predict versus you, but the intent may be to keep the world around longer for people. I'm a conservationist, so the green energy stuff, I think, I don't like the policy, but I could get on board with the intent. There are other probably more divisive things, guns, things like that maybe we just see completely differently. But there's a lot of things out there that knowing why somebody is passionate about something helps me in my disagreement with them about what they're passionate about. So I want to move forward from the kumbaya and kind of ask you to help us as conservatives, Republicans, people on the right, maybe populists that just support Trump, help us understand what's happening among Democrats, progressives, and liberals, and I'll let those be whatever categories, the Venn diagram that Kamala likes to use, 3 circles if we need to be. When we sit back and watch this, we have our own observations. But for you as someone who told me years ago, before she was vice president, that Kamala Harris was a rising star, if not the next big brand for the Democrat Party, what are you seeing? How do you see us getting here? And is it a positive thing?
Yeah. Look, I have been an admirer and support. I wouldn't really sort of qualify myself as by any means being in the inner circle of the Kamala Harris, campaign. But, I've lived in California for a long time, so obviously watched her as the attorney general and then a state senator and then as vice president, et cetera. So I've been an admirer. And I mean, I think, what we're seeing, and we're sort of seeing it at a grassroots level, if you're just sort of looking at the anecdotal evidence around fundraising and voter registration and just general enthusiasm, and I don't want to like over, calculate on that. That's anecdotal. I don't have the data. Yeah. But there is, there's something youthful. She's very smart. She's very qualified. The energy that I think she's brought into not just the party, but the overall campaign, because I think a lot of people were suffering from the fatigue of two older gentlemen, running, both of whom have been around for a long time. And she's been around, obviously, but I think not in this sort of public type of scrutiny. And so, look, we're only, 4 days since she sort of became the candidate. But I think there's definitely an energy and I think an enthusiasm that is refreshing and exciting. And I look forward to the general public getting to know her better. I think, at least people who are open to it will be, impressed. And then we'll see. I mean, the game is afoot, I guess.
No, absolutely it is. Similarly, for the vice presidential pick for the conservatives, I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasm, but a lot of who is this guy and let's get to know him. So I get that completely. Looking at how this came to be, just the events that have unfolded over the last couple of weeks, take the assassination attempt out of it because I think that that's probably played the least role into this other than maybe the little bit of a bump that Trump got afterwards. But if we go back to before the debate, I think is a good place to start. On the right, Fox News Channel, we're having a conversation every day about the Easter Bunny is showing Joe Biden where to go. He's getting lost on stage. We're told, hey, their words, not ours. This was a cheap fake. We're taking things out of context. We're not analyzing it correctly. We have the debate, and it was my perspective, and you can push back against this, but it was my perspective. The debate from Joe Biden's point of view was the last chance opportunity because historically, if you look at his debate against Paul Ryan, or even his debates against Trump, he's been a pretty good debater. Like whatever other communication problems he has, he's been good at debating. He comes out and in his own words, he had a bad night. And then this cascading starts to happen. I don't know if it's a snowball rolling downhill, if it's a choreographed coup. I think that conspiracies are a tough area to exist in, but I think in politics, there's always people working behind the scenes for their own interests or the interests they believe in. So with Kamala Harris being this presumptive nominee, and the latest is that she has the delegates, do you see any problem whatsoever with her, how she will become the nominee as far as Joe Biden deciding to drop out of the race and her being kind of, and I don't mean this in any way, but anointed the next person in line?
Well, I think there's two things there. And I think, it's first like the condition of the president. And I think it's a slightly flawed premise to sort of say that he's totally mentally incapacitated. I think he's old. And I think the signs of aging have been showing for a while. And I think the decision he made was probably, and again, I mean, I'm just a sort of consumer from afar, like everyone, like a lot of people. But at least from afar, it looks like he made an assessment based on, one, the data, the polling that was coming in, showing where he was in the race and the lack of confidence, especially in his own party, amongst his own voters, et cetera. But also just, I mean, it's a tough job and it's a 4-year job, so looking into the future. And I think, finally he was starting to listen to the people around him saying, hey, there's just a lack of confidence. So I think that decision is made. But I think it's a flawed premise to say he's incapable of doing the job right now. We don't have to debate his track record, et cetera, but I would argue that it's been a successful presidency and maybe over time history will judge that however it may. I think the second issue of her sort of coronation anointment, because that's sort of like the language that's been used now. I mean, look, at the end of the day, and it's sort of ironic to me that the GOP has sort of become the defender of Democrat, voters, but as a Democrat, as a progressive, there's a grounds, not only has obviously the party come, the potential, the other people that may have, competed against her were an open, some sort of caucus or something like that. But there's an enthusiasm. I have not spoken to anybody who's dissatisfied with this process. What has lacked in the Democratic Party, even in the last year, is a sense of unity, like a sense of energy. Like there is one now over the last 4 days. We'll see what happens over the next 100 days, but there is one now, and nobody stood up and said they wanted to challenge her. I did not get the sense from the constituency that there was a deep desire to go through a process. I mean, I think the desire is to focus on November, and that's exciting, and that excitement's kind of been lacking, and that's where we are. And you know, I think usually what happens when, you know, as a sports fan, usually when the other side is accusing you of cheating, or it's because there's, oh, like, hey, you're talking to a Patriots fan here, so I know. Usually what it means is like, there's that's a tough opponent coming. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I agree with you in that if Republicans are saying Democrat voters are being, you know, having their right for a primary stolen, it's because another primary on the Democrat side is not good for Democrats. So I listen, that's the politics of it. President Trump didn't participate in any debates. I think he would have been happy if he had not had a primary at all. And ultimately the votes kind of showed that, but we had a primary to find that out.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I believe you. And I think that's important for people on the right to hear. You may think, if you're a voter for President Trump or on the right or just really not happy with the current administration, you may think, how could someone, you know, how could Kamala beat Trump now? And I think that's such a misnomer. It needs to be put out to rest. Both of these candidates are going to have to campaign like they're running from behind. But when you say you haven't met anyone that's uncomfortable with or dissatisfied with, and as a matter of fact, most people are enthusiastic about her as a nominee, I think that's important for folks that I agree with to know. I mean, you have to understand that if you're running against somebody, just like you have to understand that, like you said, a football team's quarterback might be really good. You just don't want them to be. And I think that's important for people to hear. I want to turn the page a little bit, though. If I'm sitting here and I'm hearing you about Kamala, what's your guys' perspective on Trump? Are you afraid he's going to win? Do you think he can win? Do you see a different version of him than you saw in the last 4 years or 4 years before that? Like, what's an honest assessment of where you think Republicans and President Trump are?
Well, look, I sort of believe philosophically that everyone's right from their perspective. And while I've certainly had my own challenges, you know, looking at President Trump, former President Trump, over the years, like I just don't align, I think, with a lot of his policies, et cetera. I don't know the guy personally. And I sort of refrain from judging from afar. And I am very sort of aware that there's a media narrative and there's, you know, there is a, by and large, a liberal media. And, you know, I'm cautious about, the reason I am not a supporter is because of policy and because of experience, having lived through 4 years of President Trump. But it is not a personal criticism, condemnation. I know people who, you know and admire and vote for and support President Trump, I mean, like yourself, and I respect them. So, you know, I have a lot of respect for his base. I think I've learned a lot, you know, just from being around it. I think it is a very competitive race, and I think it will continue to be. The polls, I guess they're tightening already from everything I've seen. I'm sure over the next few weeks into a convention and out of the convention, et cetera. You know, I'm not a big believer and lover of our system, you know, the electoral college, because ultimately it's not probably going to matter, you know, California and some of the places that, you know, I voted in the past. I've voted in 3 places, Massachusetts, New York, and California, you know, in my life. And, you know, I've been consistent and those states have been consistent, but this will come down to, you know, certain swing states. I think there's probably more swing states now that are up for grabs than there were a week ago. That's exciting, I guess, and energizing if you're a Democrat. But it's going to be tight. And look, I also believe at the end of the day, like we're all going to have to figure it out. So whatever's on the other side of November 6th, there will be, you know, and hopefully, you know, some side will be disappointed and hopefully it'll be, you know, safe for all of us, but we'll still have to figure it out. We'll still have to figure it out together. And, you know, I'm hopeful that at least this sort of dialogue, you know, helps with that.
On that topic of figuring it out together, this question I'd written down is kind of a question I always keep you in mind about, because I think it's important. And I hear people touch it, but usually not in earnest, not with integrity. They touch it because they know at some point it needs to be a little bit kumbaya. But it's this idea that, is there anything in American culture today that brings us together more than politics divides us? And I remember, like, I'm 38 years old and I'm from the South, but I remember a time where I didn't know what party anybody belonged to. I didn't even presume what party somebody belonged to. I remember when people loved Reagan and Clinton equally where I'm from. And I remember a time when they liked Clinton and Bush equally where I'm from, as close as they were. But now it seems like it's your identity, man. It really is a part of who you are. If people don't know who you're voting for, you're not doing enough to explain yourself. And I don't like that necessarily, but you do sports. You do sports from a storytelling point of view. I'll point out your documentary on Kobe was a huge deal in that world, transcending basketball. Your documentary with Tom Brady, I believe it was Tom versus Time, again, talked about everywhere, showed a version of one of the greatest athletes ever that a lot of people didn't know. I know you're working on another project now. I won't name a name because I don't know where you are with it. But telling those stories, and even coming and telling my story with NASCAR, do you think some of those things still are powerful enough to help us figure out after the election that we're still a country and we still have to be around each other?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, as we're here, we might as well promote, like, right now we have a series on Netflix called Simone Biles Rising. It's a story of Simone Biles as she returns to the Olympics and hopefully cements her status as the greatest ever. And it's amazing and inspiring and nonpartisan. We have a series on ESPN Plus right now with Serena Williams, and looking at her historic success over 20 plus years, all of that. But the things that sports teach us, I think if you're an admirer of athletes like the ones I just described, is like, what does it take to be the greatest? And it's not just talent. It is things like resilience. It's being accountable. It's being part of a team. It's like all the great qualities that, help you sort of compete at the highest level. And usually, like I said, they're not physical, they're mental, they're emotional, they're about toughness, like enduring challenges and stuff like that. I think those are qualities that we can all sort of learn from, we can all aspire to, not necessarily to become great athletes, but just to become great at whatever we do, to become resilient. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from sports. I think, part of being a fan is, being part of something greater than yourself. When you go to an event, whether it's a NASCAR or a baseball game or a basketball game or whatever, when you sit in those stands for the 8 hours, you're one with all of those people around you. You probably do not have the same politics as a lot of them, the same lifestyle, the same diets or whatever. But, you have a shared love of that thing for that limited amount of time. And I think that is something that we can look at and kind of learn from. I'm not one of those kumbaya people that say, oh, sports and politics, have to, like, sports is politics. Some of the greatest, I'd say, advocates and thought leaders have been athletes, from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Billie Jean King to Jim Brown to so many different people throughout our history. But I also think there's a place in sports sports is a great unifier. And there's a lot to be learned. And, especially in our very polarized time, there is a refuge in sports, which I think is nice.
I agree completely. And I'm not trying to make this back to the partisan, but I just find this interesting. So it's not a trap question whatsoever. Sure. Sports you've told me since maybe the kneeling is probably, because I was involved in Colin Kaepernick. We text back and forth about the time I met you. And so I was involved in that early in my media career. And you've told me the whole time that your belief is that is how it should be. That not necessarily that you think sports should be divisive through politics, but people like Muhammad Ali should not be afraid to proclaim their politics through their platform, even if that's sports. And so the juxtaposition of that is, can your love for an athlete or an actor or any type of entertainer survive their politics? maybe the gotcha question is, do you think Harrison Butker was treated fairly by athletes? I mean, one of the Williams sisters, I don't remember which one, looked him in the face at an award show and told him, "We don't need you." And it was very, very, in my opinion, mean and unnecessary. So does it go both ways, or is there much more of a place for someone to be liberal and anti-Trump in sports or kneel than there is for someone like Harrison Butker? And I know that I've got some holes in my argument there, so I'll let you shoot through them.
Well, yeah, I think it's complicated. We probably a whole another show to be focused. But look, there is a cost to being outspoken, no matter which side of the aisle. So whether you're Harrison Butker or you're Colin Kaepernick, or right now, like I would say, even in the current NBA, LeBron James is a pretty progressive, outspoken guy, and so there is a cost to that. Does it cost you fans? And certainly this sort of goes outside of athletes to just like public people in general. There's a cost, but I think that's I don't know, should it be or shouldn't be? It is, and I've always believed sports are religion, sports are politics, sports are a microcosm of our culture. And for those who are comfortable, Harrison Butker included, I think the one thing that I sort of resist on both sides of the aisle is people who are outspoken, who are uninformed, who don't, like if you feel strongly and you have the sort of historic and the context, you should, and you want to, you should feel, but it will come at a cost. You may lose fans. Yeah. And, Harrison Butker now is going to have to deal with the reality of, presuming he's on the team, when he travels, certainly to blue states, there's going to be people and haters and, and like, that's the reality, whether or not it's right or wrong. But, I wish no ill will upon him. I don't know him personally, and I respect that he has strong views, but, his views challenge a lot of conventions for a lot of liberal people, and there will be a cost to that.
No, I get that. And I'm not rebutting this at all, but we see that, LeBron James likes to say a lot, and he's holding a book upside down. You ask him to quote something from it, and he can't conjure anything. Being informed matters. Credibility matters. Whether you think Harrison Butker is informed or not might be more of a personal, subjective view, but I agree with you completely that if you're going to walk out on that plank over the edge of the ship, you better know how to swim, because you might have to jump off of it. And I think you're absolutely right there. And I think that's part of the responsibility, right?
Yeah, and I'd say the one thing, especially because I do have a little bit of insight, having worked with LeBron, for example, is like, no matter what you think, the guy has put his money where his mouth is. He has built a school in Akron, Ohio, where he's from, and really invested and been a catalyst for a lot of change in the lives of young people. And that to me is very admirable and very worthy of praise, independent of like the again, polarization that we live in. And, I don't know, I can't say, maybe Harrison Butker has in terms of his church, et cetera. And I should be probably more informed about that. But, I think there are a lot of people that, really do invest themselves, put their money and their resources, behind their politics. And to me, that's admirable.
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And I guess that's the better part of this conversation, right? Two things can be true at once. The criticisms of LeBron James can be rooted in truth, even if they're embellished or mean. And the praise of LeBron James can be rooted in truth, even if they're embellished or overlooking blemishes. And from that is the word grace, right? Your show, Religion of Sports, in the Christian faith. I don't know the others as well, but in the Christian faith, grace is a huge concept. And it's one that I try to remind myself of every time I'm talking politics. And I think that goes back to the question of maybe we should exercise grace. Like, for example, there's a movie that came out, Ungentlemanly Warriors or something, and the main guy there has said a bunch of mean things about Trump and conservatives in general. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to watch that movie. And it's like, why? Why would I rob myself of just pure entertainment because I don't like what that person said in real life? And I think with sports, maybe more than any other version of entertainment, we're at least a little bit inclined to maybe overlook that and still enjoy it for what it is. I mean, do you think that's maybe the case, or do you think that's
one of the reasons I love sports is because they're mythic, right? Like ultimately, what is sports about? It's, people trying to be the best version of themselves, to reach this sort of archetypal apex, right? Apex, to compete in the Olympics. If you watch Simone right now or any of the other people competing in the Olympics, they have really devoted themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually to becoming the best version of themselves, because that's what it takes. I mean, it's why I love sports. It's why I love documenting the lives of, Serena or Steph Curry or Tom Brady or all these people, because independent of politics, that is really admirable. Those are the qualities I want to show I have a 17-year-old son, just like you. We share that in common.
17, wow.
Turned 17, but like I show him, I'm like, the things you can learn for when I think why we put our kids in sports programs is not because we think, well, if they take 10,000 shots, they're going to become Steph Curry, because guess what? They're not, but it's, learning about being accountable, being part of a team, being resilient. The best athletes in the world usually fail more than they succeed. And what do you learn from failure? Tom Brady always tells me, he's like, it's the 3 Super Bowls I lost that were the most important because they helped me understand how to win the other 7, and I think there's something really admirable about that. And it's what I cherish about sports. And sports it's why I will be glued to the Olympics, why I love I just watched the Euros. There's sports I don't even understand, like NASCAR and stuff, but I love the competition of it, and I really enjoy seeing people aspiring to be the best version of themselves.
Well, listen, I don't know why you believe in all the things you believe in as far as like politics and policy, but I never have ever doubted since the day I met you that you love this country and you love the people in it, and that's a root for it. And I hope that the folks listening and watching, at least pull that from it, that there are good people and there are people with good intentions that we disagree with. And ultimately, we're going to have to be on a plane with them, on a bus with them, and we might be in a stadium cheering with them. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, look, I'm very grateful. I'm the product of the American dream. My parents were both immigrants. They came to this country and they made a life for me. And now, like my family, my son is of mixed race, so he, to me, is the face of this country, of the future of this country. And so, it's an exciting time. I think we also sort of live in a time where it's like, man, it's pretty, all the negativity in the news, you can get pretty down pretty fast. And yet, I think I do believe this is the greatest country in the world. I think there's a lot of challenges right now that we probably collectively have to figure out. I look forward to November 7th. I think the next 100 days or whatever is going to be exciting, I guess, in the same way sports are exciting, but I also look forward to the day after, and breathing a sigh of relief and getting back to work together, because we'll have to figure it out together.
One thing I know is we'll still be friends. And I think that's the point of having you on today, is to inspire other people to have those types of friendships and these types of conversations. Gotham Chopra, filmmaker, avid fan, maybe flaming liberal, I don't know. I mean, progressive, but most importantly to me, a dear friend. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor.
Yes, sir. All right, that was really fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly did. Selfishly, I hope you guys did too. This is the Will Cain Show. I'm guest hosting Joey Jones. We're going to take another quick break, and then we'll be back to wrap the show up.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
Streaming now on Fox Nation.
This is insane.
This summer, join Abby Hornacek.
The biodiversity in this national park is world-renowned.
Get parked.
Get to just sit and take this all in.
For a new season.
There is no way this is real.
This is Parked.
Don't miss Parked with Abby Hornacek. Streaming now, only on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
I'm Dana Perino, co-host of The Five and co-anchor of America's Newsroom. Join me for my podcast, Perino on Politics. Every Monday, I'm going to talk to people I trust in politics as they tell me what they're seeing and thinking in the 2024 election cycle. This week, I'm joined by Fox News radio political analyst and editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider, Josh Kroshar, as we look at the historic reshaping of the 2024 presidential race. Available now on Apple, Spotify, and FoxNewsPodcast.com.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Will Cain Show. I'm guest hosting Joey Jones. If you're just now tuning in, you've missed a heck of a show. You need to go find this on YouTube, Facebook, foxnews.com. You need to go back and watch. I think this was a really cool show. I want to bring in the guys that make this show happen, Patrick and Dan. What do you guys think about that conversation with Gotham? I know that Will likes to have those kinds of guests, but I haven't seen Gotham on Fox before. What do you think about it?
I thought it was great. Will loves to have different opinions on the show, so it's not just the same thing over and over again. And guys like that, and I'm like Gotham too, where I grew up in the Northeast, and am around a lot of liberal voices and Democrats, and so it's interesting. And then being here at Fox, so it's really great to have those difference of opinions. And he had a lot of great things to say, and very interesting.
Patrick, where are you from? I don't remember.
Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, we're not.
Is that the South? Is that the South technically? That's the South, right?
We're like
Jacksonville
the end of the deep South.
Okay.
And then like you get to Orlando, and then it's like you're out of South End.
This is going in a different direction, but Will said on Fox and Friends the other day that Jacksonville is if a pawn shop became a person. Did he get that from
you? We've had this
So
conversation.
good. Yeah.
Because one of my close friends is from Jacksonville. And he texts me and he's like, my buddy Greg goes, Will Cain's on the Punch on Site list now. He goes, and that's an exclusive list to get on.
Listen,
that's good.
It's true, okay? Everyone from Jacksonville knows it's true. But if anybody outside of Jacksonville says it, we want to fight them. Yeah. So it's like we love our city, but we know what's really up.
Well, that's a part of the conversation I want to have with you guys real quick, because Jacksonville's a perfect example. That's a sports town, man. I mean, that's a big sports town. He's a huge Gator fan. He's a huge Jaguars fan. You have the Florida Georgia rivalry game there every year. Mm-hmm. Going back to what Gotham said, you think sports can surpass politics? Is it a place that we can still get along or maybe hate each other for different reasons?
Yeah, I like the idea. Like I can separate, the political views of a musician or something that I like, or an athlete that I like. And someone said in the chat here before, fall in love with the art of sports more than the characters on the team. You can separate those things and still follow a team. And a lot of people don't want to see it on the field or on the court. A lot of people want, they don't mind people having their own opinions. But sometimes, they're people, they're voters, and, things kind of intertwine. But yeah, it's a tough tightrope to walk sometimes.
Not a lot of people remember this, especially our age, because we weren't alive back then, Joey, because I'm 37. I think Dan's 37. You're 38.
Hey, 36.
36. My bad.
God, just a bunch
there
of
was
kids
there was a player for USC when they played Alabama, and Alabama was an all-white team back then. And he was a black running back, and he came in and he ran all over Alabama, and all the fans were like, "Wow, maybe we need to, desegregate, our football team." And it brought people together. I think that's what sports does. Is it brings people together, and you start to realize that, hey, maybe we're not all different, or maybe the political stuff is superficial. I loved what Gotham was saying, a lot of it, and he makes some amazing documentaries. So you can't. I don't want to separate myself from from what he creates. You know.
I would
I'd be a
also
part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to casually just drop. Oh yeah, Tom Brady was telling me the other day.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, he knows what he's doing, and he knows. Listen, I got a signed jersey after we did Religion of Sports, and it's JJJ, whatever it is that Brady says a lot. It's not the LFG, but it's something else he says a lot, and then he signed it. And that was the same year that the Houston Super Bowl happened, where they beat the Falcons by coming back from 28-3. And I waited 3 years before I hung that jersey up because I was at that Super Bowl. My heart was broken. But, so it's like, it was pretty cool because I had this polar opposite feelings. I hated Tom Brady and I loved Tom Brady at the same time. I hated the athlete Tom Brady and I loved the person Tom Brady in that moment. And it's like, we see ourselves. I think I made a point to you guys, like in NASCAR, if you're a NASCAR fan, the racing itself is better today than it's ever been. I mean, if you watch NASCAR in the 90s, Harry Gant might be up 5 laps halfway through the race over everybody else because he cheated better than they did. But the personalities, I mean, Dale Earnhardt would spin you out, and Bill Elliott was this golly gee oh shucks guy. Like the corporate side of NASCAR has turned them all into a vanilla wafer. And politicians who used to be these clean-cut dudes, and mostly dudes who wouldn't cuss on TV or wear a beard, now they're the rough and rowdy and throwing insults. So it's like it's the opposite has happened to each of them.
Well, I feel like Trump brought that in too because it is that kind of more personality and not just talking points and being kind of like bland and just bringing in a little attitude to politics. And people take that with it and get more into politics because of it, and they feel it a little bit more.
On this topic, I'd want to revisit something from earlier. It's really important. We're talking about things that bring us together and divide us. The example I used was grits or cream of wheat. Where do you guys fall on that?
Patrick, what about you? You first.
I don't know what cream of wheat is.
What?
I know what grits are. Not a huge fan. I'm probably wrong.
Oh, come on.
It's that Orlando influence on Jacksonville, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I've never had grits in my entire life, so I don't know what that is. I'm cream of wheat.
Cream of wheat is horrible. So grits, the way to eat grits, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but you do butter and sugar. I eat them sweet. And in the South, a lot of people don't do that, but that's the way to eat them. Put butter and sugar in there, you'll love them. And then the other one was
my mom made them wrong.
That's exactly right. I would not say that, but you did.
I did.
The other one is: are you eating stuffing or dressing at Thanksgiving?
Stuffing. What does dressing mean? What do you mean by dressing? Like salad dressing?
Do you want me to give you the best example of what the difference is?
Yeah.
So they're both like a cornbread that has seasoning, sometimes vegetables in them that go along with the turkey. Okay. Stuffing is put inside the turkey and cooked inside the turkey, thus it's called stuffing. Now they make like a frozen version that you put in a dish, but the origin and the concept is you stuff it in the turkey. Mm-hmm. Dressing uses turkey, some of the broth from the turkey and cornbread, and you create it and you put it in a casserole dish, you bake it in the oven, and you eat it as a side dish to your turkey. Dressing is far superior, tastes better, looks better. It's not stuffed inside of a dead bird the whole time it's getting cooked. And it's another thing that the South gets right. So there you go. Listen, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I can't thank you guys enough for letting me host the last 2 days. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sure you're excited to get Will back. For those listening and watching, this is the Will Cain Show. I've had a good time. I'm Joey Jones, your guest host. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And right now, you need to check out that Will is hosting a Fox Nation special called White House in Crisis, the Cognitive Cover-Up. And as you can guess, it's about President Biden's obvious decline and how it's been covered up. You'll see Dr. Mark Siegel, Mary Catherine Ham, Guy Benson, and Joe Concha on there with Will. So go check it out on Fox Nation. It is White House in Crisis. This was the Will Cain Show. I'm Joey Jones. We'll see you guys later.